Item is the approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Support.
And support. Additions or changes? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Public comment. 5-minute public comment period. Please step to the podium and give your name.
Morning, my name's Lauren Greenwich. I've set in my application to be appointed to the Department of Human Services Board. I know it's only until I think October, November, but it would be my intent if I was appointed that I would apply again for the next full term. I'm not going to go through my appointment or my application part by part. I did want to acknowledge that I am aware that there are two parts to the board. That is the social services part and the medical care. I didn't talk much about the human services because that's pretty much cut and dry. That comes from the state of Michigan. In fact, it was last time I was on the board, we hired a director, and we had to get state approval before the director could be approved. I have 6 years on the board, previous experience, and I think even more important than that is the 10 years that I've been a volunteer. I think that it's important that you have an interest in that and not just, oh, the appointment's coming up, I guess I want to be appointed to the board, or somebody says, well, why don't you apply? I've been involved with that. And I forgot to mention in my application that I did have an experience. I was the guardian of a man who was there, so I've had a year dealing with them. And it was not necessarily good as far as the application process or getting qualified for Medicaid. So that's one area that I would look at. The other area that concerns me is the occupancy. It's very low, and when I was on the board, we were never under 190, 192 in that area, and I understand now they're in the 180s, and every occupancy is $6,000. So I would appreciate you looking at me. As I say, I don't think there's anyone that has applied that has the experience, the knowledge, or the shown interest. I mean, it was on my part, not somebody saying, well, why don't you do it? I took it upon myself to be a volunteer and spend a lot of time there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Good morning to each one of y'all. I'm Kenny Price, and I would like to be on the DHS MCF board. I'm getting to the point where an age that the people at the facility are my contemporaries, and after this weekend I feel tired and hurt enough to want to be there myself. The board, as it currently states right now, is run very well, has a fantastic chairman, and I would like to be a point of it and try to help the citizens of Jackson County and Jackson County itself. So I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Public comment. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to committee items, the first being minutes from the June 10th Affairs and Agencies meeting. Looking for approval.
Second.
Motion and support. Changes or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next up are the appointments, which are all on one sheet now, which I appreciate. First up is the Emergency Management Advisory Council. And it looks like we have first 8 are only one applicant for each one, which for the ease of it, unless anybody planning any alternate nominations from the floor, we could do All those first 8 in one fell swoop, I think.
Chairman, I'll move that we, since those first 8 are all dedicated positions by through specific category, I'll move that we forward all 8 to the board.
I'll name them just for the records on tape. Sheriff or Representative is Sheriff Steve Rand. City Police, Chris Simpson. City Fire Chief, Dave Wooden. Michigan State Police, Kathy Fitzgerald. Township Fire Chief, John Johnston. Township Police Chief, Mike Curry. And Emergency Medical Services Provider, Dick Borton. Number 8 would be the Jackson County Medical Control Rep, which is Jill Glare, and that's as printed in the packet. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. There's 2 open public member seats, which are 9 and 10. Those had been filled by the current member, Paul Overreiner and Scott Krevel. No applicants for those, so they'll carry over. And then we have 1 commissioner member. It was Cliff Hurl's old seat, and John Polachek has applied for it.
Full board.
Any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Ag Preservation Board, there's 2 positions. Local Natural Resource Conservation Interest, it's Harley Darnell spot, no applicant. Agricultural Interest member, Greg Sanford again, no applicant for it, so it'll carry over to next month. Retirement System is the next one up. 1 commissioner member, current member is Chair Jim Shotwell, who is the same applicant.
I'll move they forward Chairman Shotwell's name to the full board.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Department of Human Services Board, 1 public member, it's vacant. The applicants are Lauren Greenidge, Scarlett Turvey, Michael Halaka, hope I'm saying it right, and Kenny Price. Julie?
First of all, I'd like to commend especially the 2 gentlemen here in the audience for being here and your involvement. We have many qualified candidates here. I nominate Kenny Price.
Any other nominations from the floor?
I nominate Lauren Greenwich.
Okay. Any other nominations from the floor? 2 nominations are Lauren Greenidge and Kenny Price, and the clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Leitner?
Price.
Commissioner Leshka? Commissioner Alexander?
Price.
Commissioner Placzek?
Price.
Commissioner Elwell?
Price.
Chairman Elwell? Excuse me. Kenny Price.
Kenny Price's name will be forwarded as a recommendation, and Lauren, thank you for your application also. I think that's it for appointments. Got a list of upcoming appointments. D on the agenda is the Airport MDOT sponsor contract for the final engineering design runway 725. Kent Maurer.
Good morning. This is a sponsor contract in the amount of $710,000. It will pay for the contracts that were approved last month by this body, and those are primarily with Mead and Hunt to do final engineering, but SME has a small part of that to engineer the soil move for the landfill materials. Requires a 5% match. The county share is $33,706, and that funding is contained in the Runway Public Improvement Fund.
Commissioners, any questions? And if not, we're looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff, annual report.
Morning, thank you. Just to give you a quick update of what's going on at the Sheriff's Office, thus far this year, average daily population consistent with previous years, about 402. During the summers, we wind up being just a little bit lower than maybe in the winter or fall time, which I don't know how to necessarily attribute that other than people are less inclined to want to be out of jail at that particular time. About 4,000 inmates thus far taken in this year, which is again consistent with what we've shown over past years. There's a list of doctors' calls, nurses' calls, mental health services provided. In preparation for our commitment for 2014, we've we began actually as soon as the discussions took place, bringing in more boarders from Michigan Department of Corrections. We're up to 41 this morning, so that by the time we get to 21, it'll bring our numbers up. But for 2013, we should exceed our revenue projections for 2013 and also be ready to meet the expectations that we have for 2014 to try to help with the budget. Have not had any, we were close in the late winter to our numbers, our maximum population, but thus far we have not had to turn away any arrests, local arrests, if that's a concern for anyone. Again, met all of our compliance for state mandated training and standards. There's a list of some of the other issues we have in our facilities. Kind of brings home the fact that this is not a country club by any stretch. There's been a lot of fights, a lot of acts of aggression, misconducts, assaults on guards. Patrol division, again, consistent with previous years, probably up just slightly. Concealed pistol applications up significantly. We were averaging right around anywhere between 100 to 150 prior to December. There's an uptick. We're still averaging pretty close to around anywhere from 200 to 300 now. It's coming down a little bit, but concealed pistol applications are up significantly again. Purchase permits, we're going to see that number continually go down because unless it's a private party to private party sale, we do not do the background on the pistol permits, but you'll see that number come down slightly for the end of the year. Arrests, again, very similar picture to past years. Slight increase in some of those numbers, a little bit of decrease in civil infractions year to date. Major crash team partnered with Blackman Township State Police and our office and have investigated 3 pretty major crashes this year, one at Moscow and Sears Road, another at Sears and Thorne Road that was a fatal. The previous one was 2 teenagers were hurt quite badly in an accident that occurred at the intersection of Moscow and Sears. And lastly, McCain and Deering Road brought the task force out to complete that case. It's been a very beneficial relationship because it gets the roads open sooner, prepares what I think is a pretty solid case if there's any prosecution for our prosecuting attorney's office, and in the end, I think the public is best served by having this joint partnership. Major cases we're working on in our agency right now, receiving and concealing stolen property and break-ins. There's been a rash of those on in the city and also bleeding into Summit Township and some of those areas. A lot of the people involved in this are juveniles, so that's why you see 2 suspects have been charged thus far. One of the people related to this case was actually bumped up to adult for trial, even though he's a juvenile. It's complicated because it's often difficult to deal with the juvenile issues unless you're able to adjudicate them as an adult. Also, investigated a case of 13 stolen computers from Career Center. Suspects were identified and charged in that case also. JNET activity report, I'll let you look at that for a moment. From at least anecdotally, the deaths associated with the use of heroin seem to be down, but obviously heroin's still an issue. Crack cocaine seems to be doing pretty good business here locally. I guess it's one of those things. It's still the only unit dedicated to stopping some of the influx of drugs, and you can see some of the numbers there. And I think almost as important as anything is the number of guns seized. There's 13 guns taken off the street by virtue of some of the raids and search warrants they've executed. Just a highlight of some of JNET's cases this past year. One which I think you'll recognize. You'll recognize a drug trafficking case out of from Mexico to Texas up through. They followed these folks all the way up from Texas, delivering cocaine. One of the, I guess, the wheelman in that one was one of my opponents in the previous sheriff's race. I don't expect we'll see him next time around. So he's doing federal time on those charges. And then you can see some of the maybe Jerry would speak to the medical dispensaries. He sent a letter out, shut down medical marijuana dispensaries. We've had, with JNET, at least 2 raids on one dispensary that refuses to comply with the directive given by the prosecutor's office. Animal control highlights. 895 complaints handled thus far this year by animal control officers. Again, this is something that we're committed to working with the police agencies countywide to take on this task next year with their absence. And also, just so you're aware, I've been working with other agencies within the county to try to come up with a more comprehensive plan, a more workable plan to try to accomplish what we need to as far as taking care of the animals in Jackson County, and I hopefully we'll come up with a workable solution that'll be satisfactory to everyone and not have people off the street for too long dealing with those issues. Some of our volunteer hours, and these are a little low yet because the fair and balloon festival and some of those activities have yet to occur, but Mounted Division deputies have 250 hours of service so far, reserve deputies 321, and we still have a lot of volunteers that come into the office and work on filing and those kind of things, totaling nearly 500 hours for the year so far. And there's a list of our grant update. You can see the direction we're going with the Homeland Security grant. Years ago when I started down in emergency management, it was somewhere pretty close to $800,000. In 2010, we received countywide $214,000. Then the next year, $108,000. Next year, this past year, $53,000. You can see where we're going. I don't know with Boston and some of the issues happening in the nation whether that's going to change. That usually is the impetus to up the money a little bit, but obviously there's not a lot of discretionary money there from Homeland Security to get some of the things we need in the county. Project with City Police is just beginning. We're doing the install on some of the equipment downtown, and I know there was concerns last time about whether any county money was used to purchase equipment for city police, and no, that was all Homeland Security money purchased. And it was minimal that had to be done, but we're going to put them online, I hope, by for sure before the end of the year, but hopefully sooner on our radio system. They'll eliminate that redundancy. They'll get off their UHF system, and we'll be able to speak with them county-wide and hopefully keep all of us safer and on the same sheet of music. Exercises and emergency management. A lot of you, I saw some of the same faces at the tabletop exercise and the Public Officials Conference. I appreciate everyone's attendance there. Very important to keep up to date on those things. Also, there was Skywarn training back in March that was conducted by our office for weather spotting, tornado spotting, that type of thing. The list of some of the calls for service, again, fairly consistent with what we've seen over past years. And this is from Central Dispatch, so if there's a call for service, and I think this report was generated just prior to maybe the end of the year, so we could have been a little bit low on some of these numbers, but within probably a few hundred of some of the calls. You can go through those numbers if you like. I know you all have this. And fire service, calls for service. There's a list there, again, fairly consistent with what we've seen over past years, and then calls for service by month. And surprisingly, June rather low, and I don't know what to attribute that to other than we didn't really have a lot of severe weather. So, more on the radio system with city police, final stages of getting their equipment up and running. The other thing it'll do for the city police, which will be beneficial for them when they're out in the county area, they'll be able to probably communicate better than what they were when they left the area of the city of Jackson, where their radio system primarily was functioning. Any questions?
Julie?
Thank you. I don't want you to get too nervous, but I did take notes with all of my questions.
Okay.
First of all, in regards to the animal control officers, I would just strongly encourage you, when you look at revamping, if and or when the budget passes and the need is made, that you, I just would appreciate any collaborative efforts with Michigan Farm Bureau and Jackson County Farm Bureau as well.
That's one. I'm glad you said that, because I've been in touch with Jim Spink, and that's one of the efforts that we have going. I don't see any reason to change that's worked very well for us, and we don't understand. Well, unless you grew up on a farm, and I didn't, we don't understand livestock issues. And Farm Bureau has been a great partner in the past, and I don't see that changing.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that comment public, and as well as I understand Michigan Farm Bureau has been, the newsletter has been in contact with you as well, and I publicly in their media shared that you have worked very well with Farm Bureau, and it is a #1 priority in Jackson County as well to make sure all issues are addressed. So,
thank you.
You are welcome. You mentioned the number of investigated cases for the concealed pistol application.
Yes.
Is that a random selection, or is there something on an application that maybe flags it for you?
We investigate. We probably do a more thorough job than I would say a lot of counties, which led to my concern over, back a year or two ago, there was legislation that was going to turn that over to the state police or Secretary of State. The things we do, we have a checklist. It's about 20 long, and in fact, my assistant, Doreen, deals with all of the concealed pistol applications. She goes through our record system. She goes through Lean, NCIC, so that we find all the information, especially if it's a local candidate that wants a firearm, that we know what they've been involved in. And just recently, which we're permitted to do, we denied at least 2 applications last month because of all the police contacts that a person had, which wouldn't appear on NCIC, Lean, that type of thing, or SOS, or any of those record systems. So I think unless you have access to our records, so to answer your question, it's not random. We do this for every single applicant, which has basically doubled her workload. But I think it's important to go through every system we have. D12, which is a very valuable system that tells, if you go into Lean or NCIC, you're going to see one part of the story. But if you dig just a little bit deeper, you may find that you've got an applicant with a history that you just don't want. And we don't exclude that many. Most people are aware enough to know that they don't apply if they aren't truly, so maybe 1 or 2 a month. And it's not random. We do every applicant.
All right. Well, sounds very thorough. Third, on the slide number 10, I was really surprised when you were looking at the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull that up. It was slide 10, the low number of meth and heroin.
And I don't know what to attribute that to. I really don't. I'm pleased to see that those numbers are down, because those are 2 of the nastiest drugs that we tend to deal with. And then marijuana's high, and crack cocaine and cocaine seem to be pretty high for this year, but I don't know what to attribute that to, other than I know there's been a lot of enforcement, and maybe, I'm not foolish enough to think that maybe somebody hasn't migrated back to whatever's cheapest. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that'll gravitate toward whatever drug is cheapest or most readily available. So.
Okay. So my concern there, or wondering, is substantiated with your as well. The last thing, Sheriff Rand, is in conversation at my township meeting last month, and at an event I was at on Saturday in which I was speaking with a city councilman, the fireworks issue continues to come up. And as I did a little bit of research, because obviously this is not my area of expertise, I read that House Bill 4743 allows local units the ability to enact ordinances regulating the ignition, discharge, use of consumer-grade fireworks during specific hours the day before, day of, and day after a national holiday. I guess my question to you, and again, this is my last question for you, how does this new fireworks law affect Jackson County?
Well, we can enforce, the sheriff's office can enforce any local ordinance. The only caveat is that we need to know about the ordinance, we need to have a copy of the ordinance, and we need to, be well-versed on it. And that, I'll take a step back. It would be nice if there was consistency, not duplication, but consistency across the board about how the townships wanted those issues handled. It would help. I guess it would be beneficial to us, especially pertaining to that particular ordinance, if it wasn't each township doing it completely differently. You know what I'm saying? So that there was, I remember when we had talks out to Blackman Township, and there was talks about collaborative efforts and making the township ordinances similar, if not the same as one another. And it's just difficult for our agency to enforce an ordinance unless we know exactly what the ordinance is. And we're willing to do that, especially if there's a particular problem that exists. I think by policy, the state police does not enforce township ordinances. We are able to, and I think they're able to, but by policy they don't. Did that answer your question? I took a long road to get there, but we're willing to do it. We need to know about it. Probably the ordinance should be on file at the clerk's office, and in an ideal world it would be available electronically so that people in the car could gather this information on their computers.
But currently, there's no county policy, correct? Because I did go on Board Docs and Googled it, and nothing came up.
I don't believe there's any county ordinance that regulates fireworks, no.
Thanks, Julie. Chairman Chatwa.
On the same topic, I had a conversation with two of my supervisors, and Supervisor Dunn wanted to thank the Sheriff's Department and Sergeant Schutte for handling the incidents that have gone on the last month in Summit Township under the noise ordinance, and also he stated another ordinance, but he didn't see a need nor a reason to create a new law, but to continue working with the Sheriff's Office and the representatives that are out there within the noise ordinance, and have found it to work very, very well, and wanted to commend your department for that effort.
Well, it certainly helps that we've been in Summit Township for, more than 30 years now, so we're pretty well acquainted with their ordinance.
Other questions or comments of the sheriff? Dave.
Your comment about the marijuana dispensaries and one refusing to close, just a curiosity, I guess, how much other drug paraphernalia do you find in those when you...
I'm sorry?
How much other drug paraphernalia do you find in a dispensary when you close it, or when you are called there?
Well, it depends on the dispensary, but you find quite a bit. And then again, there are ordinances dealing with even, but again, it's complicated. The law, we got some clarification, and the distribution seems to have at least slowed down, if not stopped. Well, slowed down. And it's just one of those things that, I mean, we had conversations, I know Chief Elwell was there, talk of expanding some of the state law pertaining to marijuana sales, and I guess I'm thinking long term that it's just going to be at some point in time become legal. I don't like that, but that's where it appears it's headed.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you very much.
Region 2 Planning Commission. Grant.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. It's been a busy 6 months for Region 2 providing planning and zoning and transportation services to the county. You've got your report in front of you, so I won't go into great detail on everything, but I would like to highlight the efforts with the Jackson County Planning Commission, which is now up and running. We just had our third meeting last Thursday evening. Amy Torres, who is in the audience, is our chair for the commission, and all the other commissioners that you appointed seem to be gelling quite well, and I think we've got a very good group going. At that meeting last Thursday, we did pass the bylaws for the Planning Commission, and so we are in a good position to move forward. A website was also developed for the County Planning Commission, and the address for that is in your staff report. And so I would encourage you to go and look at that, because it's really designed to as information for the townships that we serve, as well as the general public, in addition to the county planning commissioners themselves. And we've also reviewed 2 coordinated planning cases which used to come before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, very detailed report in the packet. Carl?
It's not a question. I'd just like to make a comment to the everyone here. Myself and the other individuals on the Jackson County Planning Commission have clearly stated to Grant that the work that he's done at this point is quite commendable. He has spent a lot of time in preparation, and the Commission has responded quite well to that, which allows us to do what we need to do. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. His work has been very, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for the brief comment, Mr. Commissioner Rice. Any other comments? Hearing none. Grant, thank you.
Thank you.
Prosecutor's biannual update. Prosecutor Jarzenko.
Good morning, Commissioners. I last reported at the March meeting, and we've had a very busy spring. At the end of April, we had the Todd Robinson murder trial. It was the shooting death of 18-year-old Isham Gant. I have to report through the efforts of Assistant Prosecutor Jake Dickerson and Detective Brett Stiles of the City Police Department that able to secure a guilty as charged first-degree murder and felony firearm in that case. That's really difficult to get a first-degree murder conviction, and especially in this case, what was very significant was that it's a shooting case in the city. In recent years, we've had great difficulty in getting community support for the witnesses that come forward and testify. It's no question we have enough evidence to charge. Many times witnesses are very intimidated for their own safety, their family's safety, their friend's safety if they come forward and testify. In the Robinson case, I was very gratified that we had the community support so that the witnesses actually came forward and testified as to what they saw happen. We also had in the same month, at the end of April, the Roger Ozier bank robbery and armed robbery case. That was the armed robbery at the Aeroquip Federal Credit Union here in town. Chief Assistant Mark Bloomer, working with detectives from Blackman Township, Chris Bolter and Bob Schrock, did a great job, and he was convicted guilty as charged on those counts. Armed robbery is a capital case, just as the murder cases. Also at the end of April, too, we did our first presentation on financial scams on seniors to the Department of Aging, along with Sheriff Steve Rand and my assistant Charlie Hamlin and myself. Charlie's been assigned as our financial scams assistant prosecutor to act as a liaison with seniors in our county who are potential victims or victims of financial scams. That went off very well, and also he's done a number of other presentations in the community as well. Our goal is to take a proactive approach to try to limit the number of victims we may have or experience. In addition to, one of the goals I have is to do a public service announcement with the sheriff also in line with that proactive approach. Also at the end of April, we also did our first legal updates training for police officers. We have not done that in a long number of years. Myself and Assistant Charlie Hamlin did that for local officers. It was free. It went pretty well. We basically, in a short amount of time, had to highlight and summarize last year's law changes. We had 176 new laws or amended criminal statutes. And one of those we wish we would have had in place. The next case update is the Daniel Ronquillo torture and child abuse first-degree trial that occurred in May, I believe. But in that particular case, the child abuse first-degree statute, among other things, was amended last year effective July 1st, making child abuse first degree a capital offense, just like you have for armed robbery, given a schedule or a grid A, which means most likely if you're convicted you're going to get a prison sentence even with no criminal record. Before that, though, it was a 15-year maximum offense, and that's what applied to Mr. Ronquillo, who was recently sentenced on 2 counts of child abuse first degree. Judge Wilson exceeded the sentencing guidelines and actually gave him 15 to 22 and a half years. That's the case, of course, you may know of the 2 children, 1 and 2-year-olds, who were put into a bathtub full of scalding hot water last May 30th. Also, we had in the spring the Amanda Redmond abuse and neglect trial. This is also the civil counterpart to the criminal case. This was the young woman who had been drinking to excess, had an infant child with her, and lay down on a couch with that infant child in an intoxicated state and rolled over and smothered the infant. That criminal trial is pending, but this was the civil case in which the court took jurisdiction to order services for the parent on that child. And then there was an unusual case in that because the defense attorney in that case did not ask for a extended stay on jurisdiction, it actually went to a termination phase the next day. And so her rights were terminated in that case, which was unusual to see that kind of quick procedure. Next, just recently, we had the Jerry Watson home invasion first degree felony firearm felonious assault trial. This is a pretty violent crime in which husband used a firearm, broke into wife's apartment, shot open the door, went upstairs, pointed a loaded firearm at her. Young teenage son jumped on dad's back, preventing what I believe to be probably a shooting death of the mother, the wife. He was recently convicted. His sentencing date is going to be August 28th before Judge Beebe. Finally, we also had this spring the Timothy Jordan armed robbery trial. This was a case in which Judge McBain had consolidated 3 armed robberies, 2 armed robberies, 1 assault with intent to rob while armed. He was suspected in 9 other armed robberies last year in the county at McDonald's restaurants here locally. He was convicted as charged, and we're thankful for the work that was done on this case. It's a pretty violent crime as well, armed robbery being a capital offense. Also this spring, we are very close to actually making an advance using iPads with the district court judges and local detectives to now, we're very close, we should be up and running to use iPads to do electronic search warrants. That's pretty significant because the current process of doing search warrants, you actually have to use paper, and so detectives have to draft it, then they have to contact the judge, then they have to get the actual document, then they have to serve it on the residence that they want to execute the search warrant. The beauty of the iPad is that electronically the judge can review it, can sign electronically, send it back electronically, so that actually the detective can actually be in the police car outside of the house that's to be searched. And the portable printer, they can print it off so they can serve that document, and so that should speed up obtaining and executing a search warrant probably by at least a couple hours, if not more. Also this spring, I formed a planning committee to form a Jackson County Task Force on Human Trafficking. The Attorney General has done that. I have been approached by a number of citizens in different events I've gone to and meetings asking that we investigate this. It's not only just sex trafficking, but also labor trafficking. And so we've had a couple meetings already. Assistant Prosecutor Jake Dickerson is going to lead that effort in my office. And in addition to that, I was approached by the Office of the Inspector General after my budget proposal, and they've asked and we've agreed to do a review of welfare fraud cases for a fee. We're expecting that probably we'll be reviewing about 100 to 120 cases per year estimate. I believe it's $75 per review whether we take the case or not, and there's additional fees if we do go forward with the case. So that's underway. We should be getting a review cases probably the next couple months to start that. And finally, we've coordinated an agreement to substitute our current polygraph examiner, Dave Curtis. Dave Curtis is retiring as a local polygraph examiner. It may not seem significant to you, but in many times we have police investigations here, especially CSC cases. There is a need for a reliable polygraph examiner who you can actually schedule and get an exam within a timely manner. There is a state police, but it's normally like a 3 to 4 month wait or more. And normally our investigations who can't wait that long. And so Dave has recommended Jeff Floor, and he is a retired state trooper who's experienced polygraph examiner. He is up and running here this month in July, so we're excited to have someone that caliber available. And finally, though it's not on my agenda, since the sheriff mentioned about medical marijuana dispensaries, I have to say that we've been quite successful, that most of the owners of dispensaries have complied with the law, People versus McQueen. The Hydro World owner has not. However, his one business on West Avenue was substantially reduced, and in fact, he's forced out of that building by the landlord and to move down the street to further south, I think Wildwood and West Avenue by the Shell gas station. And there's been a couple raids with that, and I expect that the landlord there is going to cooperate. And so I think we're doing pretty well with that, and I'm thankful to the local dispensary owners for their cooperation and local law enforcement, especially JNet has done an excellent job in investigating those cases as well. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions of the prosecutor? Phil.
Morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Phil.
I have a question about the iPad search warrants.
Yes.
You say that they can be obtained electronically, of course. It
Yes.
cut down the paperwork considerably in the time. I would assume, I don't know the law exactly, but on a need to search a vehicle, do you need a search warrant, or are they exempt? And if you need a search warrant, how long will it make a traffic stop extend out in time?
Well, that is an excellent question, and you can actually write a book about that topic alone. But typically, a motor vehicle does not have the same type of expectation of privacy as the standard as a home, because of course it's mobile. Certainly can see through windows in most cases. Typically, there are exceptions to the search warrant requirement. If someone is arrested, search incident to arrest, for example. And so the iPad search warrant typically is going to apply to a home in most cases because, for example, a car, if there's enough probable cause, you can seize the car, and if it's towed in, the law does allow an exception to a warrant. It's called the inventory search, where it's towed in and searched to identify the inventory, the contents of that vehicle. So To answer your question, typically the iPad or electronic search warrant's probably not going to apply to a motor vehicle example.
Thanks, Bill. Jerry, just one more quick question on the search warrants with the iPads. I assume that would or could potentially pertain to blood search warrants also,
Absolutely, yes.
which could be very much in the car with an officer on a computer versus having to sit down, type it out, fax it to the magistrate or judge, and then get it back.
Correct. And Commissioner Arlo, you're exactly right. I think the great advantage or benefit of the electronic search warrant is just speed and efficiency, being able to reduce the time. And one of the benefits of that, I think the consequence would be, you free up the officer because you speed up the process and they can investigate other crimes.
Okay, Jerry, thank you.
Thank you.
BRA, Amy, you stepping up?
Good morning. You have a resolution before you and a memo that summarizes the reason for the resolution. Just as a quick summary, there was a brownfield plan approved in 2008 for property in the village of Brooklyn at 221 Mill Street. There was a development there at that time involved Next Gen Energy. That development never came to fruition. However, some of the eligible activities were conducted through a loan the village received from MDEQ. And so the brownfield plan allows for repayment of that loan through the village of Brooklyn, but we're requesting the amended brownfield plan be approved to allow payment of interest on that loan as well. Also, the brownfield plan will allow baseline environmental assessment for future development and increases the administration costs, and that covers some of the costs that brownfield staff and the consultant used when we assisted the Village of Brooklyn to come up with a reimbursement agreement to allow that tax increment payment.
Commissioners, any questions? Julie? No? Okay. Steve?
Amy, the tax increment will be captured predominantly of county tax dollars. How much county tax dollars will be in the capture?
I believe the plan shows about $7,665. That's total. That's all entities. I believe right now there's around a little in excess of $6,000 that's being captured. If the property is for sale now, if it sells and the tax increment increases, that amount will increase for the amount collected.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
And it goes for 30 years. The tax increment would be captured and used to repay that loan for up to 30 years, or if the loan is repaid before that.
So if the property is sold for a less value and the effectively then gets reduced in value, what does the tax increment get set at?
The tax increment would be whatever the difference is between the base value that was determined when the brownfield plan is adopted and the increment. Let me see if I can find that.
Let me just follow. Say it sells, say it. The numbers here, and it sells.
It's a good question. I'm trying to.
Does Brooklyn then owe? That's the difference.
I'm trying to think when the base value would be what is adopted currently. 2013, I believe. Let me see if I have that. Initial taxable value for 2014 is indicated at $93,029. And The first year of tax capture will be the first year after eligible costs for BE activities are incurred. Start date provided is only for illustrative purposes. So that is the initial taxable value, $93,029. That is
That's as of
as of
2008 or?
2014 estimated.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Dave?
If the value goes down and there's no tax increment, there's no tax increment to provide to the village, and they're aware of that. The reimbursement agreement and our conversations clearly state that any tax increment collected will go to them to make those repayments. If there is no tax increment, then they will not receive any payments.
And Amy, to be fair, there's been a substantial amount of cleanup there, and it is right on the water, correct? The property we're talking about.
Yes, it is, on the mill pond. And there has been a substantial amount of cleanup, yes. Woodblock flooring was cleaned up.
Okay, no other questions. We'd be looking for a motion to send this on.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 71327 and recommend to the full board for approval.
Motion and support. Additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
JC dot. Got to be Joe.
Yes, good morning. Item I there is the MDOT contract for our fiscal year 2013. We were successful in obtaining some safety funds for some improvements out there on Berry Road at Churchill. And we're going to cut that hill down on Berry Road probably about 3 foot. So you got adequate sight distance out there. We had some serious crashes over the years, and so we were successful in obtaining those funds. The $138,000 of safety funds and $65,000 of JDOT funds to do that project. And this is one of those routine paperwork trails that you have to do. It's the financial aspects of the contract. And so we are asking that the board chair sign this resolution and the contract there at next week's meeting.
Do I hear a motion? Motion and support. Questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chairman Chella.
I have a question for you, Joe. Received an email from your department on concerns about timeliness, the fact that the Board of Commissioners only meet once a month and that documentation. Could you walk us back through that concern, please, and then share with us why it can't be done when we know these projects anywhere from 2 to 5 years out? The issue?
Are you talking about these MDOT contracts that come to the board and they want you to sign them within 35 days of the date of the letter?
I'm hoping that my other commissioners will understand your concern with that email you sent out. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, I did talk to the lady that signed this letter here, and I say, look, we just got this letter here the other day, and the board's not meeting till July 23rd, which is beyond the 35-day requirement that you're asking for. I mean, you're not going to restrict our funds, are you? She says, no, that's okay. Just send it in when it's all done there. And so we do have accommodations from MDOT, and they have okayed that even though this is going to be a few days beyond that 35-day requirement, that we're going to be okay.
Hopefully we have it in writing.
I did save the voicemail from her.
Good.
But we did take bids on this Friday. MDOT has their bid openings once a month, and I don't know the results of that yet, so maybe they come in under budget, which would really be nice. And on time, yes.
Just out of curiosity, do you have, is there a time frame for when this is?
The construction?
Yeah.
Well, once MDOT checks the bids, then we can schedule a pre-construction meeting, and we will hold that sometime in the next couple of weeks. and then the contractor, once he supplies his bonds and insurance to MDOT, and they award the contract, then the contractor can start. So I'm thinking we're going to start mid to late August, and it's a 30-day contract. It's fairly quick, so.
Okay.
Yes.
Water main
Dave?
extension in Spring Arbor. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Julie.
When you tackle, when MDOT has projects like this, are any JDOT employees on site as well, in addition to that subcontracted firm? For projects like this?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we will have, during construction, are you speaking of here? Well, we will have an inspector out there at all times. Is that what you mean here? Yes. They will be out there, and they have to take all of the reports and calculate, get the quantities, measure the quantities that the contractor put in for the day, and everything is done electronically now. It goes into a program called Field Manager, and it generates pay estimates, and now you have e-signatures, and so you don't even have to sign these things anymore, and they just go through, and it speeds up payments to the contractor, payments to the subcontractor.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Phil?
Phil?
Morning, Joe.
Morning.
Several years ago, we had a discussion on Jefferson Road at Region 2 Planning Commission on repairing Jefferson Road. And basically, the plan was shuffled a little bit, and Jefferson Road is supposed to be done in 2014, next year.
That's correct, yeah.
However, at the last Region 2 meeting, I found out that we're not going to redo Jefferson Road now, we're going to patch it. The agreement we had 2 years ago was it was going to be resurfaced. And the road is in very poor shape. I'm getting complaints from residents where they're actually having to have their drywall repaired from traffic going by and hitting the bumps so hard that it's jolting the house and cracking the drywall. How can we get this resurfaced rather than patched?
Well, I think you probably have to move it to 2018 right now. It was in the tip. It was passed by the Tech Committee last week. I mean, I brought this up at the JAX meetings the past 3 or 4 months. I've done cost estimates to crush and shape the road and to repave it, also to mill and fill the project. And when you get into detailed construction, now you have to follow these AASHTO standards. And that means I got to pave that road 32 foot wide with gravel shoulders, ditches, front slopes and back slopes of the ditches. I think it would add maybe 100 trees to be cut down. And you're talking about 3 years maybe to do this as opposed to 1. And not only that, whatever projects you have in 2015, 16, and 17 are all going to be wiped out because you can't fund those because you need that other money for Jefferson Road. So what I did is we have our crack sealing crew is going to be out there here very soon to seal the cracks. We've had our superintendent out there to deberm Jefferson Road to get the water off of the road. And also we're going to Durapatch Jefferson Road before we come in next year to do the work. And we're going to put a heavy wedge on this too, Phil. And I mean, I've got estimated about 6,000 tons of wedge, which is almost, it's between an inch and a half, or an inch and a half of asphalt. So it's almost like you're going to get an overlay. And then put a double chip seal over that, and then a fog seal on top of the double chip seal. So it's going to look really, really good. I mean, because we're doing a lot of prep work. We've been planning this. You know, we did the deberming last year. We're going to do the overbank crack sealing this year. We're going to do the Durapatching next year before we even come in with our federal aid contract. And see, there's only $900,000, and so those estimates to mill and fill and to crush and shape were double that.
Thanks, Joe. And, well, are we on topic with what's on the agenda here? Phil, I tend to agree with you, and I think probably there's a better time to discuss that again because that was on the radar here, I think, 2 years ago. It was moved because of lack of funding and changed. But I'd like to stick with the agenda here, and I'm certainly game to bringing it up another time. So, Joe, the water main extension in Spring Arbor?
Yeah, that's a site plan. The engineer was OM&M Engineering. They are Spring Arbor Township's engineer, and they are connecting the water main from Richard Street, which is a road north of M60 off of Henderson behind Fritz Advertising, through the trailer park there, and then tying it into the water main on Deering Road. And that will give them a full loop system, so you don't have dead-end water mains and a lot of rusty water complaints out there. And so, when site plans come in, I have a checklist here, and I go through it up one side and down the other and make sure everything's covered. Once I get the okay, then I'll send them to the board. I stamp the plans that I've approved them and the date that I've approved them. So when the contractor makes his copies, anytime our inspector will go out there, the contractor should have an approved set of plans. So I'm just recommending to the board that we approve this extension. It's not for a lot of water main, but it does have value out there. And if they have to shut the water main down for a leak somewhere, at least they have a source on the other side to supply those people with water.
Commissioners, any questions or comments on this? If not, we can have a motion, please.
Support.
Motion and support. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Joe, Summit Township, Sweet and Savory Shop.
Sweet and Savory Shop. That's a parcel of the Polly's development out there between South Jackson and Ferguson. And these developers bought this property, and they are putting in a Sweet and Savory Shop with an entrance off of South Jackson Road. Plans were submitted, and I've reviewed those and responded with some revisions that they needed to make. Revised plans were sent back in. They looked okay. I signed off on them. I approved them on the 18th of June. And so I am recommending that the board approve this site plan so the developers can get their contractor and get going on new business in town.
Make the motion to authorize this site plan.
Support.
Motion and support. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Joe, that's it for you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Administrator Controller, the Calhoun County Road Department Agreement, which I assume is what we saw on Friday?
Yes, that's correct. I really don't have a whole lot to add, although amenable to any and all questions.
And if I understand it right, Calhoun County approved this last week themselves, correct?
Yes, they actually approved it Thursday night.
Commissioners, any comments or questions on it? And if not, if we could have a motion to send it on to the full board?
Support.
Motion and support. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Claims. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Other minutes and the reporting schedule are there. Public comments. You have 3 minutes. Anybody from the public that would like to comment? Hearing none. Committee member comments. All kinds of hands up. Julie.
I would just like to say it was very nice to meet Mr. Peterson last Friday at our study session, and I was very pleased with his energy level and his enthusiasm for tackling the proposed merger between the two counties.
I don't know if any commissioners are getting comments concerning the fair. There's, for health and safety reasons, the fair board is passed a ruling that there's no eating in the barns. The Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, the Community Health, State Community Health, and state veterinarians. With zoonotic diseases that are out there, and last year there were some cases at fairs. We passed a resolution, there's no eating in the barns. Now, I've had some calls, if you've got 4-H families in your district that ask the question, we're trying to be proactive. We don't want to have somebody actually get sick from eating in the barn. So the resolution was set, so there's no eating in the barns this year. So if you get questions, we're trying to be proactive in a health situation.
Thank you, Commissioner Lechka. Any other questions or comments? Phil, did you have any additional comments on Jefferson Road? Now would be a good time if you did.